Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today for called Chess Masters with this wonderful team here. I'm Karen Smith. I'm the executive assistant to Calspra. Started last May, and now I'm going to pass it on to Josue, and he's going to take it away.
All right, thank you, Karen, and thank you, folks, for being here. I'm excited to present our panel today that you'll meet in just a second. But today's session is called Chess Masters. It was one of the highly rated conference sessions from 2024. So we're going to jump right in. Let me start my screen share, and then we'll meet the crew. Hold on one second. All right, give me a thumbs up if you're seeing this. Okay, perfect. All right, so welcome to Chess Masters. In front of you today, you have Jimmy Evans over from Temecula Valley Unified School District and Monica Gutierrez over at Murrieta Valley Unified School District. Myself, I'm now at Poway. I was previously at Menifee Union School District, hence why the little banner there says Southwest Riverside County Schools mostly. We're in North San Diego County, so close enough. And then joining us, Melissa Valdez, actually now Melissa Priestley over at Lake Elsinore Unified School District. And so you'll get to meet all these wonderful folks as we go throughout this presentation. So from there, I'm going to hand it over to Monica to lead us from here.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to watch a quick video that kind of sets the stage for what it means to play chess in education and how you can master the game of school PR. This really just kind of sets the tone of the rest of the presentation and really how to position yourself to win. Josue, can you press play? Thank you.
There's a power within each of us. When awakened, it can boost.
Doesn't it ever wake you in the middle of the night? The feeling that someday they will pass that foolish law, or one just like it, and come for you and your children. It does indeed. What do you do when you wake up to that? I feel a great swell of pity for the poor soul who comes to that school looking for trouble. Why do you come here, Charles? Why do you ask questions to which you already know the answers? Oh, yes. Your continuing search for hope. You know this plastic prison of theirs won't hold me forever. The war is still coming, Charles, and I intend to fight it. By any means necessary. And I will always be there. Old friend.
And checkmate. Hasn't it been feeling lately like we are in that position? I know myself and my colleagues that are presenting with me, we do wake up every morning with, what law are we going to wake up to? What change are we going to wake up to? What headline or social media are we going to be faced with the minute we pick up our phone? And so that truly is what it's like for school PR pros at this current moment. We know that there are attacks to public schools. We know that there is a playbook that intentionally tries to undermine public education. But fear not, because we've got all of you communication superheroes that are going to learn how to win the game. Not only that, we are going to go through a couple slides and give you some tips that truly show you what it means to master that and how to keep calm when everything around us is so chaotic and changing.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to chime in on is that you guys all know that kind of like the clip that you're trying to identify what is going on, what is happening. And I think that one of the things that we're hoping that you'll learn from this session is that don't go at it alone. The whole Chess Masters idea is really that team building and the ability to have people around you that can help you identify who the players are, identify what's going on in your city or in your region, identify what's happening that you can identify for what not only what's happening on with law, but also what's happening in your local area with social media. Board meetings have become a crazy place for many of us. We need to be able to identify what's happening, and then in order to really get the pulse on the community so we can communicate effectively and be able to strategize about problems and start seeing things happen and predicting what might happen before they actually do, so you can get ahead of a lot of those problems.
All right, so Melissa and Jimmy, talk to us about Southwest Riverside County and give us a quick glance.
Melissa, you want to go first?
Yeah, sorry. I've a little bit of a delay over here. So our Southwest Riverside County is made up of a various school districts. So just represented today, Temecula, Menifee, Lake Elsinore, and Murrieta. And so one of the things that we've noticed is that we serve dynamic communities. So we have different groups of people, demographics, race, politics. So one thing that we've noticed is that our communities are tightly connected. So they intersect. In Lake Elsinore alone, we have 3 cities that we service over 140 square miles. So that kind of dynamic may be similar in the communities that you serve. So in the Southwest region, we noticed that the more that we work together and collaborate with each other, check in and see the different challenges and opportunities that we have, we've been able to, work smarter, not harder, being able to lean in on each other throughout our daily interactions.
And many of us in South Riverside County, I've been in my school district for over 20 years, has seen a massive shift post-COVID with involvement in board meetings, with people showing up, trying to make a name for themselves, oftentimes trying to get clips for social media, trying to kick off their political campaigns and do lots of other things from the board meeting themselves. So in that kind of dynamic, you have to understand that what used to be is no longer, because we used to have really boring meetings and there would be nobody there and it would just be a few of us staff members with that. So the game conditions have changed. They've become much more involved in what's going on, also beyond parents, because many of who we have aren't even parents in our districts, but they're coming in from other cities, from all around. They want to make a point, whatever their political view might be or so forth. So we've had lots of that. And then it's also brought a level of contention that we're just not used to, whether it's in our school sites or at our board meetings. We're not used to that level of animosity and some of the rhetoric that's come from the podium during comments and public comments. So the game conditions have changed. It's become much more involved and much more intense. So with that, you can't just ignore those factors. You have to address them. So we've been trying to do things here in Southwest Riverside County to combat that, not just telling good stories, but also strategizing, getting to know all the pieces and working together on the possible situations that you might run into.
So with that in mind, knowing kind of how we work as a unit, we are looking at it more of a regional area. We're going to go through a couple strategies that we think can benefit, or actually I should say that we know benefit school communicators, because they are strategies that we have used amongst ourselves. Next slide, please, Jose. So one of the biggest pluses I think that we have going here in Southwest Riverside County with all of the political stuff is we know who people are. As Jimmy had mentioned, we've got people coming from the outside into our district, and knowing who they are, knowing where they come from is so vital. It is so vital for you to know why they came here and what is their game plan. So again, who's playing the educational chess in your community? Understanding why they're there and where they came from will help you win. The next slide, please. So who are your potential players? Who are the people playing chess with you? We've got our elected officials, naturally our parents, and here where we are, parents is really key because we have very fluid communities, and I think we're really unique in that Melissa may have a family in elementary school in her district, but that same family will come to my district for middle school, and then they may go to Jimmy's or they may go to Paris Union for high school. And so knowing your parent community is really key in learning what it is that they're going to play and why they keep switching districts or schools and what they're looking for. Your community as a whole, these are your other potential players. You know that community members are made up of voters. Who is your voting population? Who votes in your district? Those types of things are really important. As we stayed in neighboring districts, knowing Melissa, Jimmy, Josue when he was in Menifee, really connecting with them and finding out what is a hot topic for each district and working as a team is a good way to play the game. Your students are players. Students are playing the game of chess too. And of course, your staff. As we know, the staff is really a mirror of the community. It's values, beliefs, demographics, political affiliations. The staff is just like our community. It's diverse, it's varied, and knowing them along with everybody else on the screen is a really good strategy to win at this game. Next slide.
Can I one thing there, Monica, just real quick in terms of knowing your players is you can't afford to have favorites or have enemies in the process. You have to be able to engage very much so with all of the players. So I think that we've seen it in South Riverside County where, boards shift, leadership shifts. You have to be able to pivot very quickly depending on things that are going on. So we don't have the luxury of having like I said, people that you're on one side or the other. You really have to build relationships with everyone. And as things and the kind of the landscape shifts, you have to be able to pivot regardless of what happens with that. So I would just say, make sure not only know your players, but build those relationships as well.
Perfect segue, Jimmy, to the next slide. Understand your landscape. What are the hot topics or trigger words in your community? Now, for community scans, for those of you who are new to school PR, or maybe the majority of your career has been in educational communications, I want to let you know community scans are pretty easy to do. I think a lot of us don't realize that if you look at your city, the city that your district is housed in, you get a lot of great information about your community. And these are the types of scans we're talking about. What is the average age of the residents in your city? What is their median income? What about households with children? Do you know how many you have? Looking at voter data that is available publicly. Does your city tend to vote heavy on one side versus the other? By scanning the community and understanding who are the people in your neighborhood, you really start to figure out what strategies to work. Jimmy, you want to talk about the employee scans, or Melissa?
Sure, I can jump in there. I think one thing to take into consideration when you're doing your employee scans is looking internal at the way that you communicate information. So, do you have clear channels of communicating out information and receiving input and information from your staff? They're directly connected to the communities that we serve. So they're in touch and they're going to hear things that maybe we're not going to hear back at the district office. And so having those clear channels of communication and being able to build, a rapport with staff is very important. Being able to prioritize the information that you're gathering and, what is a pressing topic? What could impact, your district at a larger scale, and what are things that you can kind of triage We know that emergencies arise all the time, but sometimes you might have an emergent situation, then you might have things that are kind of just building in the background. So being able to balance between the two. But I think the key here is really having clear communication channels within your organization so that you know that the information that you receive and that you need to push out is gonna reach your internal audience first before it reaches your families.
Yeah, I'll agree. And Melissa hit it right on the head, but I also agree that the fact that we may be in different size cities and regions, but understand the fact of just people talking at the park or on sports fields and things like that is a reality. So in terms of your staff knowing what's going on, it's really vital that they can tell the same narrative that you are. So when they see people like in Temecula, we have a lot of parents that work in our district that live here. So with that huge integration of those two things, it's great for making sure your staff knows what's going on. We have a staff connection newsletter that goes out every other week. We kind of pivot that with the community newsletter. And what we want to do is make sure that all those narratives are the same. So people develop that trust with you as an organization when those communications are the same. Like, wow, what I saw in the newsletter is what the staff member told me at the soccer game on Saturday. So you want to try to align your communication and making sure that those channels are not only clear and open and are regularly hitting, but also that you can reiterate that same narrative. Because the thing that I've seen in the past that has built up a little bit of a frustration or lack of trust is when it's not the same message or things that they're hearing is not what they saw or what's being communicated. So keeping transparency and then also keeping everything in alignment. We like using that to make it a lot of alignment because we want to align our messaging up with throughout the organization and out to the community. So you're not hearing a different story, that you're hearing the same narrative. So I think it's just important, once again, to be out there making sure that you're telling your own story and it's not the newspapers and it's not somebody else. Create your own narrative, create your own communications channels. When Temecula was in a large bit of national drama on news and things like that, we just stayed the course and create our own news feeds. We create our own communications through our newsletters and just focused on us telling the appropriate story and us telling what's really going on versus allowing other political organizations or news feeds to tell our story. So I would just say make sure to keep telling your story and make sure that people are in alignment with it.
Yeah. So
And I can add one more. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I add one more thing, Monica? It kind of touches on what Monica spoke about earlier about kids who are in, maybe in multiple families that have kids in multiple districts. It's very similar to with employees. You have an employee who might have a child in another district. So there's a lot of times where we'll get an email and say like, hey, Murrieta did this. Are you guys planning to, do the same thing? So it's really nice to have those connections with colleagues to be able to lean in and say like, oh, can you share more about why you guys decided to, whether it's send out a letter or send out a message or maybe choose why you didn't do that. So we have a better understanding and, and also know sometimes ahead of time, like, oh, okay, families in this district are going to receive this. So how can we prepare for different questions that we might receive? Because there's a lot of intersect between employees as well.
So really understanding where people come from rings true also for your board members. I think as communicators, a lot of us think, oh, I just am professional with them. It's really my superintendent that deals with them. But remember, we are here to support our superintendents. And so really doing research on our board members is really key. What kind of research? Just like any other political figure that you see out right now in the news, you do want to look at their forms that they file with the Secretary of State. You want to know who contributed to their campaign. That'll tell you a lot about the issues they're going to bring forward. And it kind of gives you insight as to where they are on the spectrum politically, but also value-wise. What hot topics are they going to bring to the table? Understanding whether they are parents in the district or just people who want to do good. What are their motivations? Do you have a board member who has motivations and has desires to go up in the elected ladder? That is really key to know, because then I can guarantee you, if that is the case, they are going to want the big show. They are going to want the headlines. and they will do what they have to do regardless of your tone to get out there, to put themselves out there. So really understanding your board members is just as important as the other ones. And again, I can't stress enough. I know most communicators think it's really not my role, but it is, because our job is to help strategize and position our districts, not only to be truthful and transparent, but to be able to positively push information out. So understanding those motivations of the board members, and again, who backed them up and who supported them, is really key in winning the game of chess.
And if I could just add to that, Monica, I think being able to, like you said, prepare them with information. So when they speak to community members, they have the same message, like Jimmy said, that we're giving to staff. So, and doing all those things that align with your district's, mission and vision and what your board policies are, a big part of that is just making sure people have the right information. So, like Monica said, having that close relationship or building those relationships where you have the ability to communicate and provide, whether that's through your leadership or, through your office, provide them with the tools so that they can be successful in sharing the message that is the district message.
All right, so I'm going to ask you all in a second what you guys do in your partnerships in your areas, and speaking to our guests who are here today. But one of the things that this group, that I love about this group, is that it really is a partnership, and I would say it more. I mean, it really is a friendship. And so it helps us to, one, stay grounded, because our lunches together end up turning into a commiseration station, right? It helps us realize, one, we're not in it alone, and two, there are other ways of thinking about problems. We offer perspectives to one another and different experiences, and so that's super helpful. I think there's one of the very easy ways of doing this is when we begin to share communications, right? Because when you need to start drafting communications, when you just had, a school on lockdown and a bus broke down and, whatever else, and now you have to draft something that has, that's very politically charged. Having these partners in place, I mean, it's great to get all the CalSPRA listserv templates, don't get me wrong. But when you know what your neighbors are going to say, it kind of helps to walk in lockstep, right? And I know actually our superintendents from our districts also are very collaborative. But most of the time, when I get information from my superintendent, I'm already in the know, because either one of these three has already said, like, this is where we're going, right? And that's because we know that the speed of communications, especially in a crisis, has to be there. We have to be able to communicate quickly, and we can't sit around waiting for the other person to make a move. And so being able to share those types of messages and communications, as well as the timing. Hey, this is going out at 4, right? Via this channel, and this channel. Being able to know all those things really makes this partnership super effective. In addition to the lunches, and, the sushi and all that fun stuff. And then just really being able to remain neutrally in tune with reality. And I'll say the word neutral. I was telling them in a text yesterday, this morning, the word neutral I got in trouble for recently, understandably so. But I really think, as school PR pros, it's our duty to represent the diverse perspectives that live within our district, right? And our boards are, 5 to 7, depending on your district, elected officials that represent diverse populations. And so when it comes to messaging strategies, trying to find, we could call it neutrality, or we could call it common ground, right? Where is it that all of the opinions, where do they overlap? And most of the time that's going to be student success, right? And so while their opinions may be nuanced and much more complex, we can all agree on this. And so neutrality turns more into just common ground. But then the common ground across districts is also very helpful. An example will be when we had fires nearby. So the fire, I don't even remember. I have no sense of time, so I don't know how recent this. I feel like it was recent, but
It was like
we
within
had
the
fire.
last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's fires that were close to Lake Elsinore, so in Melissa's territory or in Lake Elsinore. And
Yes.
Melissa was closing schools, right? Or her district was closing schools. Our district was keeping an eye, although we had these smoke clouds coming over, and the air quality and all those things, right? And so how do we speak in a manner to where we're not communicating like we're fine, you're overreacting, while Melissa's like, oh my gosh, give me a water hose, right? So again, looking for how do we communicate in a way that we're not necessarily putting others in a position that's just counterproductive to supporting students at the end of the day, right? And so what's funny is when we do opposite things, we choose to close schools due to poor air quality. And I do remember recently we closed schools due to poor air quality, and we had all shared communications and strategy behind it, right? The day that we actually closed the school, I go out in the morning to go put gas, and this gas station is in Murrieta, and there's kids at the Murrieta High School across the street that are out running the track. And I'm like, we closed because of poor air quality, and these kids are out there playing sport, So it's those things that get a little discombobulating for our shared families, right? And so to be able to be in tune with one another and to get the rationale as to why somebody stayed open, why somebody closed, what exactly did you tell families? What sources of information are you pulling them to? Are you sending them to CAL FIRE and we're sending them to this other website? Are you sending them to air quality management and you're sending them to you know what I mean? All those things, coordinating all those things is super, super helpful. Anybody else want to add anything to this slide?
Yeah, I kind of want to add other partnerships. I'm curious for our attendees, if you don't mind putting in the chat, what are some other partnerships you think can help you win at this game? Anybody out in your community you can partner with beside a local school district?
You can also unmute if it's easier.
Yeah. Well, I actually can give you guys an example why they're doing that. An example that we just recently, you're talking about local government. There you go. Perfect. Right on. We have a former TVUSD graduate who is now he's become the mayor of our city. So coordinating with the city to create a collaborative event to kind of showcase that. He used to be a baseball player, might be like throwing out the first pitch, doing something like that. So these are all things that you collaborate with. And the more knowledge you have and the more that you work with city and so forth, you're going to be able to develop some really dynamic relationships and also share resources. So you don't have to cover, I've shown up at an event where we're covering an event and the city is doing as well. We're like, oh, one of us could have done this versus both of us, and we could have just shared. So it's a good thing to know, not only be in a relationship, but you also can pool resources. And hey, you got that video, send it over to me or I'll repost on our social media. So it's keeping that connection is important.
All right, so you guys, the chat is spot on. Partnerships with local cities. So just to give you a little background, I actually spent close to 20 years with local law enforcement and municipal government in mayor's offices. And so same with Melissa. So we were very familiar and comfortable with the communicators in the municipal realm of things. And so when we both transferred over to the school districts, we found that those partnerships actually were some of the best ones we can have for today's political climate. So the public information officer for the fire department, do you know who that person is? Do you have that person's contact number? And I don't mean like just their work contact number, but do you know how to get a hold of them if you need to at a quick minute notice? Same for the police department. Are you aware if the police department has a public information officer? If not, do you know the names of the officers or the lieutenants who have been trained in PIO duties? Having those names and those partnerships are pretty key as well. Another big one, I think, especially in today's climate of power, the public safety shutoffs. Do you know who your Southern California or PG&E rep is? who is their PIO, because that'll help with messaging as well. And so if you're not plugged into a local communications collaborative, or if you don't know where to find one, I would suggest reaching out to your partners in county and city governments. Specifically ask for the public information officers and get yourself plugged into some of their collaborative meetings. Down here in Southwest Riverside County, we are very fortunate that the city of Temecula hosts every year something called a PIO collaborative. And so it brings together all communicators from Riverside County, every city government, every utility, water districts, you name it. We all have a chance to get together once a year and listen to a presentation. So I strongly recommend, if you can, plug yourself into those. There are different Southern California government associations, Northern California Municipal Managers Association. Really seek out those groups and find your equivalent and start to form that partnership. It'll really pay 10 times over in these political tumultuous times. Okay, so now we're going to just share a couple more little tips and tricks, and we want to hear from you. We want to continue the chat conversation. Who are other partnerships, or what are other tips and tricks you can use to master this game of chess with the climate the way it is? I mentioned in a previous slide, know your city demographics. So my tip is, if you go to the city in which your district is in, look at the Economic Development Department's website. So city of, in my case, city of Murrieta, their Economic Development Department, they post several reports throughout the year. And so one of my favorite things to look at annually, and I actually do this every summer, is I look at what's called a community profile. The community profile has unbelievable gold mines of data that'll help you understand your community. It even has, for example, how far people commute. What percentage of your residents commute 0 to 30 minutes, 30 minutes to an hour, and vice versa. Good information. Again, it's called a community profile. All cities have one at least yearly. The other thing, if available, you want to look at in that economic development website is a retail report. This is a report that city governments put together for prospective businesses. Now, for the longest time out here where we live, all we ever saw on social media was Trader Joe's, we need a Trader Joe's. And I think that's pretty common in most cities. And so as you may know, Trader Joe's has a magic formula that dictates where they're going to open up a place. Well, the information they get to plug into their formula is in that retail report. So that is a really helpful tip for you all. Look at that information, the retail report. Again, every summer, kind of look at those.
That's a great tip, Monica. I'm going to have to check that out, actually.
Yeah, I can share a tip. I shared this the last time when we presented at CalSPRA, but I think that it's something that just proves over and over again to be valuable. Is I always joke people that we talked about board meetings, and one of the tips that I always give people is go work the room. I know that many of us are sitting at a boardroom meeting and we don't want to deal with whatever. So even if the person may be someone that drives you insane and that might be, bashing you on social media, I just get out there and introduce myself and just start walking and working the room. Hey, I'm Jimmy Evans. I'm here on communications. What can I do to help you? What are you here for? Oh, it's great to see you. And then the more you go and they go, you don't become this foreign object or someone they don't know, the more likely they'll come to you. And oftentimes even some of those enemies end up being ones that give you a little insight to what's going on because you start developing relationships. So I always talk a bit about working the room before a board meeting and knowing all of them in there. And regardless of where they stand, saying hello, shake their hand, and before you know it, they keep coming back. You're going to be making those relationships. But I think that it's kind of human nature to kind of shy away from the people that are being toxic or that might be doing things. But I would say lean into it. At least that's what I do in terms of my tips. I lean into the ones that even might be bashing me or saying nasty things on Instagram. Like, you just got to kind of get over that and let it go, because when you've been, I know that, we talked with all of us in here who had those board meetings and things. If you create a division or you don't want to talk to them because they're whatever saying those things, I would just make sure and go around and just build those relationships and just take the high ground and just be super positive and be friendly as you can. And it's paid dividends for me and all the craziness that's gone on over the years, just to build those relationships and then keep that positivity.
Yeah, Susan says in the chat, I like the idea of communicators being foreign objects in the room. I actually introduced myself as the foreign object in the room.
Meanwhile,
Melissa, do you want to add anything?
Myself as the hostess with the mostest as our board meetings. And then you confuse the heck out of everybody because they're wondering, what side is she on? Why is she here? What is she doing? But playing that role really gives you some good intel as to why they're at your board meetings and advocating for what they are.
I think my tip is something we've all, talked about already, is that don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask questions or for feedback. We're all dealing with similar challenges. There's a similar landscape across not just, our county, but nationwide, it seems like. And a lot of times people have already walked through something similar to you. But if you're too shy or too embarrassed, and I know I started off that way, like, well, I should know this. I shouldn't have to ask somebody for help, right? But leaning in on each other and other people's experience, you realize, like, I might be able to help, Josue or Monica or Jimmy in a way that maybe then Jimmy turns around and, provides me some feedback. When it came to media questions, I knew I could turn to Jimmy because Jimmy has had, to deal with different situations in large crowd meetings. So when those type of questions come up, I know that he could be my, resident expert on that. So, try to make note as you meet people. And I think attending things like this, just being a learner, right? Being able to just keep learning and hone your craft and knowing, that we're here to serve children. Like Josue said, and student success is important, student well-being is important. So how can we do that? Well, following all of our laws and board policy and just trying to stay in alignment.
I'll add a little piece of that too, is that we were so different, all of us down in our district, and we have so many different gifts and talents and the way we communicate that it really is helpful when I'm trying to communicate something and my understanding, or maybe not necessarily my skill set, or if there's somebody else, like if I want some information on city and how they're working there. I know Monica is a great resource. I just think that you have to find all of those players because they all have different backgrounds, and that's what you have to figure out, because you can't just, most of us now have a 2-person department. Shout out to Jody, my partner in crime. But I think that when you're a single person in the department, there's no one to talk about. There's no one to say, is this right? Can you look at this video? Is this coming across? So if you're a 1-person shop, you need to really lean into all of those other people, because the diversity of background, diversity of skill set, of talents, really helps you create a product in the end that's significantly better than what you started with.
So another tip I wanted to get into when playing the educational political game of chess is truly to remember you are the calm, cool as a cucumber for probably most of your district. We work with educators, we work with lifelong educators, people who truly just want to give to their students and their families. And because they're so focused on education, which is awesome, they should be, they rely on you to give them the information and the know of what's going on out there. What is the climate like? What are people saying? So they will look to you for that tone. If you're going to them with hair on fire, the tone is crazy, there's too much going on, you are adding to the fray. And so it's really important for you to just be the cool, be the calm, be the one to listen to them, let them kind of share some of their frustrations with the current political and social wars that are going on. Just listen and say, but we're good. But students are learning. That's a good thing. Always go back to, but students are learning. You're doing a great job at helping push the academic goals in your students' life. At the end of the day, that's what matters, as Melissa said. And saying that calmly, we may be frantic inside knowing that we're going to be attacked on different fronts, but putting an outward calm, I think, really does a great service for your district. Jimmy's the comment Temecula. So it's no secret. Sometimes I go to Jimmy's meetings undercover. I mean, I will like put on a beanie, put on a sweatshirt, because I know his board meetings are like 2 days before mine. So if Jimmy's meetings get crazy, I know that's going to come to me. And so it's really interesting because I was at one of Jimmy's meetings where it was just chaos. I mean, there were just so many groups of people yelling at each other, and I'm like moving closer to the emergency exit, and the whole time I'm like looking for Jimmy, and he's calmly just standing there right close to his superintendent, just listening. And I think that is really key, right, Jimmy?
I think that the key is that everyone in crisis, any type of crisis, they're all going to look for the person that looks most calm. I think Monica hit it right on the head. Again, it's just, you have to be the one that's the calm in the storm. And if you start running around, everyone's going to start. So I think that the key is just keeping that calm. And, I think people will appreciate that. And they know that, sometimes they're creating the chaos on purpose. So you're just trying to create the calm. And the more that they know you, they understand that you can be that person. So
I'll throw in my last little tip, and then we'll move on to close out the panel. My only tip is find who your partners are and then actually make time to go to lunch. Get it on the calendar and actually make time. I know it sounds like kind of like, why would we could just text or email, but it makes a difference when you get to spend time with folks face to face. I got lucky that these three are not only very talented, but they're also hilarious, and they know where all the good food spots are in our communities. But really, you have to be intentional about it. That's how you make these things work, is when you take the time to be intentional with the relationship building. So, Monica, take us home.
So as we close it out, remember, when you play the game of chess, there's time involved. It involves time. Don't rush to learning about your community. Don't rush to making decisions. Take the time. Take the time to make your move and get to know and strategize what you're going to do. Intelligence, which we all are extremely intelligent. Up that notch a little bit by, again, getting some of those documents and really understanding who you're talking to and why. And practice. Find your partner, whether it's city, fire, other school districts, your county office of education, even a local nonprofit. Anyone in the communication field who knows your community, partner up, and we guarantee you will win. You will get through the fray, and no matter what, students will always learn.
all right, I don't know who's up for the Q&A, but we talked about being like a game of chess, but once again, knowing your players, knowing the game that you're in, knowing all the things that are happening is really just being attentive. I know that we try to get the pulse of the community, the pulse of your district, but you got to be out there and know all of those things. You got to know all of your cabinet. You got to know what's happening. So don't be afraid to be the social butterfly that is always kind of buzzing in around your community, because ultimately that's what they want. I've been lucky enough where I live in the city that I work, but sometimes what I heard on a soccer field on Saturday has helped me from a massive issue that came on Monday. So just being able to be out there and being involved. So I would say that we're going to lead to some questions here if you guys have for us, but know that big piece is being on point and knowing your people. And I will say one thing I wanted to add about what Josue said earlier is that you also need to, if you're going to have a team, you got to have the glue. So I know that Josue, sometimes when me and Monica might have been just sucking wind, trying to keep our heads above water, you have to have teammates that aren't maybe in that same spot as you to bring you in, because I know there's times where I feel I was barely keeping my head above water, and you have to lean into your partners to be the one to be like, okay, I know I don't have time, but I got to go to lunch because I know that it's going to keep me sane and it's going to keep me on the page. So you have to have a kind of that mix of your team to make sure that you take the time, because as we all get inundated, you tend to go in your own silo and try to function out of your own thing, and it's not healthy. So even as crazy as it gets, make the time to have that connection and have those points that you can talk with your colleagues. All right. I guess
I love that. Do we want to leave it open? We have a few minutes. We can. Does anybody want to ask any questions from our friends who are logged on here? If there's something in the chat or unmute. Team RCOE is suspiciously quiet. Jimmy, can you give examples of the type of communication channels you use to tell your story?
Good question. So when I started, we didn't utilize too much of social media. Our newsletter was almost like a Word document when I started 3.5 years ago. One of the things that we had realized is that you have to find out how your parents want to be communicated with. So we started doing a survey and did some things where we pulled parents, like what is the social media that you prefer? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? What's going on? So number one, before you even talk about your communication channels, we found that not only were our parents more Instagram heavy than Facebook, but that the trend was going significantly more towards Instagram as we got younger. So all of our families, when we got like their kinder parents, it was like 90% Instagram. So number one was we use Instagram pretty much as our main focal point where we post, and we also have a parent center in our whole kind of the district Instagram. So we use that for social media. But where we've had our most success has been with our newsletters. We use something called S'more, and it allows us to embed video. Helps that I'm a former video production teacher. So we did lots of video. If you go on, and if anybody's interested, you can actually go to the TVUSD website and see all of our newsletters. We actually archive them. So if anybody's, and it can be open to anybody. You'll see we do one for community and one for staff. So every 2 weeks we have one for community, and every 2 weeks we have one for staff. So every Friday we have a communication going out. But what we learned really early on is that we didn't want newspapers telling our story. We wanted to be able to be the one. So we've actually created our own communication channels, and to the point where we've had over 35,000 views for our community connection. And we get probably 80 to 90% of our staff opening up and viewing our newsletters that we create for staff. So I would encourage you that if you don't necessarily have the best of who's newspapers and things that are making that, just create your own communication channels. And I think that we've done that, and now we have segments in our newsletter. We have people that look forward to it, talk about it in district, and allows us to just tell our own story over and over again, no matter what's being said on news or what's going on between the governor and your board members at some given time. You could always refer back to, hey, here's all the great stuff we're doing. Yeah, all the other stuff is noise, but and we just over and over and over again just hit on those positive points. And I think it allowed people to say, hey, I know that I can go to other places to get that communication, but if I really want to know what's going on in the district, I can look back to the newsletters that we generate.
Nice. Good question, Amy. I see RCOE has their hand raised.
Hello there. Great presentation. Thank you guys for coming together and sharing. And this was clearly, there's a callback presentation, right? So you gave this last year at CalSPRA. So that means about 1 year ago, you were crafting this presentation, putting it together. And I'm presuming that you had some conversations in the last week or two or day or month about what's changed since the first time you put it together. Any nuggets of conversation you guys had that has changed over the last year that you maybe added to it or took away from it, or that would be different 1 year later?
Ooh, that's a good question. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Melissa.
I
Melissa,
think
then Monica.
Yeah, I think for me, the political landscape has changed a lot. It's broadened, right? I think maybe last year, even giving input, um, my district was in a different, was a different dynamic. But then maybe Jimmy and Monica maybe were experiencing. So, but now I feel like this is like a national, we're in a national landscape right now. So it's something that I think every district is being impacted, and it kind of makes me think differently. I'm like, oh, I'm writing down these tips that Monica's giving because they're helpful to kind of set your mind frame around things that maybe you didn't really have to spend as much time thinking about before.
Yeah, I think in the last year, politics has definitely gone on steroids, and its effect on public schools, I think, has grown tremendously. Ironically, I think for our community, it doesn't seem as polarizing at our board meetings. And it's really interesting because as we've had people come in from other cities, right? And when you get to know them, I've even had a gentleman say, I'm assigned to your district from my church, and his church is like 15 miles away from us. And once the presidential election happened, he stopped coming to our meetings. Ran into him, totally random. Hey, haven't seen you. Where have you been? And he said, oh, the president's handling everything. I was there to watch. And so oddly, now things have kind of calmed, I think, for us in that way. We don't have as many advocates coming in angry. Now they're just kind of comfortably watching online and not disrupting anything. So that is a huge change for us that has happened in the last year.
I'll chime in. I mean, our landscape, the one thing I've come to, bank on regardless of doing this job is that everything shifts almost monthly here. So whether you have a board member that was recalled or whether you have new board members everything keeps shifting. So what I'll say is, at least for encouragement in this kind of the whirlwind that we've been living in here, is just stay steady, because in all of it that's happened, that's gone on now, that there's still our own level of things that happen in the board meeting, but there's a level of continuity and understanding what our communications channels are, how the district functions, and also not any knee-jerk reactions. So as much as sometimes it doesn't feel great being in the fire, there's a level of numbness that you have a little bit to be able to just even take that calmness further and not be overly responsive to any one thing that's going on, that you can just continue to tell your story, to meet with people, build relationships. And I would just say that if any one of you that's visiting here feels like they're in the fire, I would just encourage you just stay the course. I know that sometimes you want to go and your hair feels like it's on fire some days, but if you stay the course, continue to push what's important about students in the classroom, and you keep telling a story over and over again, the level at which things have escalated, I think, has continuously gone down, at least for us over the last year, as long as you stay the course and don't be knee-jerk reactive in any way.
Yeah, and I think too, when you ask about change, what's changed? Jimmy got new board members. Monica, Melissa. When I was in Menifee, our board stayed the same. So, but they switched seats, right? The different officers, and so it's a lot of same and a lot of different, and you have to wait to see it play out. And when folks are desperate for you to craft a response on behalf of an entire organization, to say something very strongly or boldly, like Jimmy said, you got to be that steady person that says, no, there's a long game here. We've seen this play out before, and we don't want to pop off every single time. We don't want to react every time, right? And so having your counterparts to remind you of the lessons learned in the past, is super helpful. So that is our presentation for you all today. Unless, Monica, did I miss anything else?
You got
it. Okay. All right. So thank you all for joining us. You have our contact information somewhere. If not, I'll throw my cell phone in there, and you can always text me, and I'll connect you with these three folks as well. Or if you guys want to throw your number or email, whatever, find me on LinkedIn. Find us at CalSPRA. And we would, just love to be connected with you all. So thank you for being here. We look forward to the next one of these. I can't remember exactly which one it is. Karen will let us know. And then, and hopefully we get to see you all at the CalSPRA conference coming up here soon. So thank you guys all.